Captain Eli Mercer steered his starship, the Odyssey, through the uncharted territories of the Outer Rim. The bridge was quiet, the usual hum of the ship's systems a comforting backdrop to his thoughts. Suddenly, a signal pierced the silence, a direct communication request flashing on the main console. Eli glanced at his first officer, Lieutenant Kara Thorne, who raised her eyebrows in silent question. He nodded, and she accepted the transmission. The hologram projector flickered to life, revealing the striking figure of an alien woman, regal in her demeanor. "You are Captain Eli Mercer?" Her voice was both melodious and commanding. Eli straightened. "I am. To whom do I have the pleasure of speaking?" "I am Queen Astrix of the Zeltrons. I demand your presence on our planet immediately. Consider this an invitation you cannot refuse." Kara's hand moved towards her weapon, but Eli gave a subtle shake of his head. "We accept your invitation, Queen Astrix. May I ask the purpose of this meeting?" "Your reputation precedes you, Captain Mercer. I wish to see if you live up to it." The hologram faded without another word. Kara turned to Eli, concern etching her features. "Is this wise? We know nothing about her or her people." Eli's eyes sparkled with a mix of curiosity and caution. "That's exactly why we need to go. Prepare the crew, Lieutenant. We're heading to Zeltron." The journey to Zeltron was swift, the Odyssey slipping through hyperspace like a ghost. Upon arrival, they were escorted by sleek alien fighters to the surface. The planet was breathtaking, a canvas of vibrant colors and sprawling cities, unlike anything Eli had seen before. As they disembarked, they were greeted by an honor guard. The leader, a tall Zeltron male named Ryzik, gestured them to follow. "The Queen awaits. Please, follow me." They walked through a massive city, its architecture a seamless blend of nature and technology. Eli couldn't help but admire the way the Zeltrons had built their world. They were led into a vast palace, where Queen Astrix awaited, her presence as imposing as her holographic image. She descended the steps of her throne, approaching Eli with a confident stride. "Captain Mercer, welcome to Zeltron. I trust your journey was comfortable." "It was, thank you," Eli replied, his gaze never leaving the Queen. "You have a remarkable world here." Astrix smiled, her eyes reflecting a galaxy of stars. "And yet it lacks many things. But let us discuss that at a more appropriate time. For now, enjoy our hospitality." Dinner was served in a grand hall, the table set with exotic dishes that Kara and Eli observed with cautious curiosity. Astrix continued to engage Eli in conversation, asking about his travels and the worlds he had seen. "As a starship captain, you must have encountered many dangers," Astrix noted, her tone light but probing. Eli chuckled, sharing a glance with Kara. "Part of the job, Your Majesty. But every risk teaches us something new about the universe, and about ourselves." Astrix listened intently, her gaze sharp. "Indeed, Captain Mercer, it is that very nature of humans, to seek and to learn, that interests me most." As the evening drew to a close, Eli sensed there was more to this meeting than mere curiosity. But whatever Astrix's intentions, he was ready. The adventure was just beginning, and he would meet it with his crew by his side. Chapter 2: A Gilded Cage. After dinner, Ryzik guided Captain Eli Mercer and Lieutenant Kara Thorne through the labyrinthine corridors of Queen Astrix's palace. The walls were adorned with luminous paintings and sculptures that seemed to pulse with life, casting soft lights on their path. "Your queen has impressive taste," Eli commented, admiring a holographic sculpture that hovered in midair, its colors shifting subtly. Ryzik smiled. "Her Majesty believes art reflects the soul of our people, ever-changing, full of depth and mystery." They arrived at their quarters, which were surprisingly luxurious. The rooms were spacious, with panoramic views of the alien landscape below. As Ryzik left, he turned back with a polite bow. "The Queen wishes you to be comfortable during your stay. She will summon you tomorrow to discuss the purpose of your visit." Once alone, Kara turned to Eli. "What do you think she wants from us?" Eli paced, his thoughts racing. "Not sure, but she's going out of her way to impress us." That could mean she needs something from us, or she's evaluating us for something bigger. The next morning, after a breakfast of exotic fruits and delicate pastries that Ryzik assured were suitable for human consumption, Eli and Kara were escorted to a large, sunlit room. Astrix was there, flanked by her advisors, all keenly observing the humans. Captain Mercer, Lieutenant Thorne, I hope you found your accommodations to your liking. Astrix began, her voice echoing slightly in the high-ceilinged room. Very much so, Your Majesty, Eli replied. We're honored by your hospitality. Astrix nodded, a flicker of a smile crossing her features. I am glad. Now let us discuss why I have asked you here. My people are at a crossroads. For centuries, we have isolated ourselves from the galaxy, fearing what lies beyond our world. But I believe it's time for that to change. Eli listened intently, his interest piqued. You want to open your world to the galaxy? Yes, Astrix confirmed. But such a decision comes with its risks. We need a liaison, someone who understands both the dangers and the wonders of the cosmos. Someone like you, Captain Mercer. Eli exchanged a quick glance with Kara, who gave a slight nod. It's a significant step, Your Majesty. What exactly would you need from us? We would start with an exchange of knowledge and culture. I'd like you to share your experiences with our council, to help them see the benefits of galactic integration. And in return? Kara asked, her tone diplomatic yet direct. In return, we offer you access to our technologies, some of which may be quite advanced compared to your own. Astrix offered, her gaze steady. Eli considered this. Working with an advanced alien civilization could bring untold benefits to humanity. It sounds like a partnership that could benefit both our peoples. Astrix's expression softened. I was hoping you would see it that way, but before any decisions are made, I would like you to see more of Zeltron. Understand our people, our culture. Perhaps then you will share my vision. That sounds reasonable, Eli agreed. We'd be honored to learn more about your world. Astrix clapped her hands, and the atmosphere in the room lightened. Excellent. Ryzik will be your guide. Explore our planet, meet our people, and tonight, you will join me for a cultural display. As they followed Ryzik out of the room, Eli felt a surge of excitement. This mission was turning out to be more intriguing than he had anticipated, and the chance to be at the forefront of a new alliance was an opportunity he was eager to seize. Chapter 3, Lessons in Trust. Under the guidance of Ryzik, Captain Eli Mercer and Lieutenant Kara Thorne began their exploration of Zeltron. Their first stop was the planet's largest cultural center, a vast complex where the history and achievements of the Zeltron civilization were on full display. This is our Hall of Innovation, Ryzik announced as they entered a room filled with technological marvels. He led them to a display where tiny robots were building a complex structure. These are nanite constructors. They can build almost anything from basic molecular components. Eli watched, fascinated. Impressive. The potential applications must be endless. Indeed, Captain, but our use is strictly controlled. We fear their potential for misuse, Ryzik explained, his voice carrying a hint of caution. As they moved through the center, Eli took the opportunity to engage with other Zeltrons they met. One, a scientist named Torin, was particularly forthcoming about the challenges Zeltron faced. We have much to guard against, Captain Mercer. Our technologies can be as dangerous as they are beneficial, Torin said, his eyes scanning the room nervously. Eli nodded, understanding the weight of such responsibility. It's a balance, isn't it? Advancing while protecting what you value. Torin smiled slightly. Exactly. You grasp it quickly. Their tour continued to the cultural archives, where ancient texts and artifacts were preserved under strict conditions. Eli and Kara were given rare access to some of the texts, which detailed Zeltron's history of peace and isolation. Why the isolation? Kara asked, genuinely curious. Our past wars nearly destroyed us, Ryzik said, his voice low. Since then, our leaders vowed never to let our world be corrupted by outside influences. But now Queen Astrix thinks it's time to change? Eli pressed, looking for deeper insights. Yes, She sees the value in sharing our progress, in learning from others, Ryzik admitted. But not all agree. There are many who fear what the galaxy holds. The discussion was interrupted as they were summoned to meet with Astrix. They found her in a less formal setting, a lush garden within the palace grounds, seemingly designed for contemplation and conversation. Captain Mercer, Lieutenant Thorne, I trust Ryzik has been an informative guide? Astrix inquired, offering them a serene smile as she gestured towards seats by a gently bubbling fountain. Very much so, Your Majesty, Eli replied, taking a seat. Your world is both fascinating and complex. I am pleased to hear you find it so. Tell me, what is your impression of our dilemma? Astrix asked, looking directly at Eli. Eli chose his words carefully. It's clear your people value their security and their way of life. But I also see a desire to reach out, to make sure that isolation doesn't mean stagnation. Astrix nodded, her gaze reflective. Yes, stagnation is the death of any civilization. We must grow, learn, and adapt. That is why I am considering this partnership with humanity. And what would you need from us to make that partnership work? Kara interjected, keen to understand the specifics. Understanding, patience, and a willingness to share not just technology but perspectives on governance, culture, and defense, Astrix explained. In return, we offer the same, including insights into our environmental technologies and medical advancements. Eli leaned forward, intrigued. It sounds like a foundation for a strong alliance. Astrix smiled more openly this time. I believe so, but trust must be earned. Captain Mercer, on both sides. As they concluded their meeting, Eli felt a new sense of purpose. This mission was not just about exploration but about building bridges. As he and Kara walked back to their quarters, they discussed the potential of this new relationship, both aware of the challenges ahead, but optimistic about the possibilities. Chapter 4: The First Touch. The next day, Queen Astrix invited Captain Eli Mercer and Lieutenant Kara Thorne to attend the Zeltron Festival of Lights, an annual event celebrating the planet's history and culture. As they prepared for the festival, Eli and Kara were joined by Ryzik, who was dressed in traditional Zeltron ceremonial attire. This festival is one of the few times we openly celebrate our past achievements and dream about the future, Ryzik explained, adjusting his intricate garment. It's a time for reflection and joy. As they made their way to the festival grounds, the city was alight with vibrant colors and filled with the sounds of music and laughter. Stalls lined the streets, each showcasing different aspects of Zeltron technology and art. Eli was drawn to a stall displaying kinetic sculptures that moved in harmony with the music playing throughout the area. These are incredible, he remarked, watching the sculptures dance. Yes, they are designed to represent the harmony between nature and technology, a key philosophy of our culture, Ryzik said, his eyes bright with pride. Kara, who had been speaking with a group of Zeltron artisans, joined them, her hands filled with small, luminescent stones. They used these in their art. Each one is charged with solar energy and glows for years. They're used in everything from art to building materials. The festival's atmosphere was infectious, and even the usually reserved Eli found himself swept up in the festivities. As the sun set, the lights grew more prominent, casting everyone and everything in a magical glow. Astrix appeared beside them, her own attire shimmering with embedded lights that reflected the festival's glow. Captain Mercer, I hope you are enjoying the celebration, Astrix said, her voice warm. Very much so, Your Majesty. Your people know how to celebrate, Eli replied, smiling. Astrix nodded and gestured toward an open area where a crowd was gathering. Come, a traditional dance is about to begin. It is performed only once a year. As they found a spot, the music changed to a slower, more rhythmic melody. Dancers in luminous costumes took the stage, their movements synchronized and fluid. Midway through the performance, Astrix turned to Eli. It is tradition for guests of honor to join the dance. Would you? She asked, offering her hand with a ceremonial seriousness that was belied by the twinkle in her eye. Eli hesitated only a moment before taking her hand. They stepped into the flow of dancers, guided by the gentle pressure of Astrix's hand on his back. The dance was a series of slow, graceful movements that required them to stay very close, their hands almost but not quite touching. As the dance progressed, Eli found the rhythm and was able to anticipate Astrix's movements. The final sequence brought them face to face, their hands meeting in a symbolic gesture of unity and trust. The contact was light but electric, sparking a connection that resonated with the crowd, drawing cheers and applause. As they left the dance floor, Eli was aware of a shift in the dynamic between them. Astrix seemed more relaxed, more open. "Thank you, Captain Mercer. Your participation honors us." "It was my pleasure, Your Majesty," Eli responded, aware of the significance of the moment. The night continued with more music and laughter, and as Eli and Kara walked back to their quarters later, both felt a deeper connection to Zeltron and its people. The festival had not only been a celebration of light, but had illuminated the potential for a genuine friendship between their civilizations. "Today was a good day," Kara said, her voice reflective. "It was," Eli agreed, thinking of Astrix's hand in his. "And I think it's just the beginning." Chapter 5: Whispered Secrets. That evening, Captain Eli Mercer found himself alone in one of the palace's sprawling, lantern-lit gardens. The festival had quieted, the once bustling courtyards now hushed save for the occasional chirp of an alien night bird. He took a long breath, letting the scent of the Zeltron flora calm his mind. As he strolled deeper into the garden, the path opened to a secluded alcove. Queen Astrix stood at its center, her silver gown shimmering in the soft glow of the lights. She seemed deep in thought, her gaze fixed on the stars visible through the garden's translucent canopy. Eli hesitated. "Your Majesty?" Astrix turned, a faint smile appearing as she saw him. "Captain Mercer, I didn't expect to see you out here." "I needed some air," Eli said, stepping closer. The festival was lively. "It can be overwhelming," Astrix admitted. "I often find solace here. The stars remind me of the choices ahead and the responsibilities that come with them." Eli nodded, standing beside her. For a moment, they simply looked up, watching the celestial lights. "You've made a bold decision, opening your world like this. I don't think many leaders would take that risk." "It wasn't an easy choice," she replied, her voice softer. "The council is divided, and my people have grown comfortable in isolation. I needed them to see the possibilities, not just the risks." Eli glanced at her, noticing the weariness in her expression. "Sometimes being a leader means carrying the doubts and fears of others. But you're not alone in this." Astrix's smile returned, though it was more subdued. "Thank you, Captain. I've seen that in you as well, the way you lead your crew, the way you stand firm even when faced with uncertainty. It's admirable." "I appreciate that," Eli said, leaning against a nearby stone railing. "But I'm just a man doing his best. I've had my share of mistakes." "We all have," Astrix agreed. "The difference is in how we move forward. I have spent so long bound by tradition, by expectations. I'm beginning to see that growth requires something more." Eli studied her face, the hint of vulnerability there. "It's not easy to step away from what's familiar, but you've already taken the first step. That's what matters." A long pause settled between them. The night air grew cooler, and the distant sound of running water provided a gentle background melody. Astrix turned slightly, meeting Eli's gaze. "You've shown me something I hadn't considered before, a future that involves more than just protecting what we have." "It's not just about what you keep," Eli said quietly. "It's about what you share." Astrix's hand rested lightly on the railing near his. Their fingers almost brushed, but neither moved away. The closeness wasn't planned, nor was it entirely accidental. It simply felt natural in the stillness of the moment. "I've spent so much time searching for answers within our walls," Astrix murmured. "But perhaps the answers were always out there, waiting to be discovered." Eli didn't respond immediately. He allowed the moment to linger, letting their shared silence speak for them. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. "You're not the only one who's learned something here. Meeting you, seeing your world, it's changed the way I look at my own. Astrix tilted her head, a curious expression on her face. What have you seen that's changed? I've seen what's possible when people refuse to give up on their ideals, Eli said. Your world might have stayed hidden, but it's strong, unique. And now you're showing the strength to grow beyond what you thought was possible. Maybe we're not so different, Captain Mercer, Astrix said. Her hand shifted ever so slightly closer to his, the warmth of her presence undeniable. Eli met her gaze, the distance between them seeming to disappear. Maybe we're not, he said softly. As the stars continued their slow arc above, Eli and Astrix stood together in the garden, speaking no more words but understanding each other in ways that didn't need them. Chapter 6. The Gesture of Peace. The grand hall was filled with a quiet hum as Queen Astrix prepared to address her council and guests. The high ceilings and polished floors gave the room an air of formality that was impossible to ignore. Eli stood near the front, feeling the weight of the occasion as the council members took their seats. Kara remained by his side, her sharp gaze moving between the queen and the assembled advisors. Astrix took her place at the center of the hall. Her attire was simple yet elegant, a departure from the ceremonial garb Eli had seen at the Festival of Lights. Her voice carried a firm, clear tone that silenced the murmurs and brought all attention to her. Today we consider a new path, she began. For generations we have lived apart, building our world in isolation. We have grown strong, but in our strength we have also grown distant. Now we face a choice: continue as we are or open ourselves to the galaxy. The council members shifted in their seats, and Eli could see that not all were enthusiastic about the prospect of change. He watched as Astrix's eyes scanned the room, settling on each counselor in turn. Her presence commanded respect, even from those who seemed reluctant. I have brought Captain Eli Mercer here to help us understand what lies beyond our world, Astrix continued. He has shared his experiences, his knowledge, and his perspective. In him, I see not only a representative of another civilization, but also a reminder of what we can achieve if we step beyond our borders. Kara leaned closer to Eli, her voice low. She's laying it on thick, but it's working. They're listening. Eli nodded, though his focus remained on Astrix. He could feel the tension in the room begin to shift. Some council members exchanged thoughtful glances, while others frowned but remained silent. Astrix turned her attention back to Eli and Kara, motioning for them to join her. Captain Mercer, Lieutenant Thorne, please share your thoughts, she said. Eli stepped forward, his voice steady. I understand the concerns about opening your world to the galaxy. It's not an easy decision, and there are risks. But there are also opportunities. Opportunities to learn, to grow, and to find common ground with others who have faced similar challenges. Kara added, we've seen what happens when different civilizations come together to solve problems. It doesn't mean losing your identity. It means gaining allies, resources, and knowledge that can help you thrive. One of the older counselors, a man named Zareth, rose from his seat. His silver hair and lined face suggested decades of experience. Captain Mercer, you speak of unity and cooperation, but what of the dangers? What if we invite conflict into our midst? Astrix replied before Eli could speak. Zareth, I understand your concern, but isolation has its own risks. By staying apart, we limit our potential. By engaging with the galaxy, we gain the ability to protect ourselves through strength and understanding. Zareth hesitated, then nodded slowly. Perhaps you are right, my queen, but this is not a decision to be made lightly. No, it is not, Astrix agreed. That is why I propose we take the first step gradually. We will establish a small delegation to explore partnerships with other civilizations. Captain Mercer and his crew can serve as our first contacts. They will guide us, but the decisions will remain ours. The murmurs in the hall grew louder, but the tone had changed. Instead of outright resistance, there was cautious curiosity. Astrix's measured approach seemed to be gaining traction. Kara whispered to Eli, she's good. knows exactly how to keep them from panicking. Eli smiled faintly. It's about trust. She's earning it one step at a time. After a long pause, Astrix raised her hand, silencing the room. We are not deciding our entire future today. We are only deciding to begin. If this delegation fails, we can always step back. But if it succeeds, we open the door to a brighter tomorrow. The counselors exchanged glances once more, and finally Zareth spoke again. Let us take this step, then, cautiously but together. The room erupted in a mix of applause and quiet discussions. Astrix looked to Eli, her expression both relieved and determined. Thank you, Captain Mercer. Your presence here has made this moment possible. It's an honor, Your Majesty, Eli replied. I'll do everything I can to help make this a success. As the council session concluded, Ryzik approached Eli and Kara. You've made a strong impression, he said, his tone approving. The Queen trusts you, and that trust will guide our next steps. Kara looked at Eli, a hint of a grin on her face. No pressure, right? Eli chuckled. None at all. But even as he spoke, he knew the real work was just beginning. They had taken the first step, but the journey ahead would require diplomacy, patience, and no small amount of courage. For now, though, he allowed himself a moment to appreciate the progress they had made. Chapter 7. The Kiss of Two Worlds. The palace balcony stretched out over the glowing city below, the alien architecture shimmering under the night's kaleidoscopic skies. Captain Eli Mercer stood leaning against the stone railing, gazing out at the vastness of Zeltron. It was peaceful here, the kind of quiet that offered space to think. Behind him, footsteps echoed softly on the smooth floor. Eli turned, finding Queen Astrix approaching. Her presence was as commanding as ever, but tonight there was something more unguarded in her expression. She was no longer clad in her ornate ceremonial garb. Instead, her simple attire and loose hair made her seem more like the person she was when she wasn't standing before a council or leading her people. Couldn't sleep? Eli asked, giving her a faint smile. I often come here when my mind is restless, Astrix said, stepping closer to the railing. And you? Same, Eli admitted. There's a lot to think about. A stray breeze swept through, carrying with it the faint scent of the flowers that lined the palace gardens. Astrix rested her hands on the railing beside him, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Captain Mercer, I have always thought of myself as someone who understands my role, my duties. But since meeting you and your crew, I've begun to question so many things I once accepted without thought. Eli turned toward her, studying her profile. That's not a bad thing. Asking questions is how we grow. Astrix's lips curved into a small, wry smile. So it would seem. And yet, it is not easy. I find myself wondering what my people would think if they knew how often I've doubted, how often I've changed my mind. Doubt is normal. It's what keeps us honest, Eli said quietly. And it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you care enough to think things through, even when it's hard. She finally looked at him, her silver-gray eyes meeting his. You have a way of making complex things sound simple, Captain. Perhaps that is why I find speaking with you so grounding. Eli chuckled softly. I think you give me more credit than I deserve, Your Majesty. Perhaps I do, Astrix replied, though her voice held a hint of amusement. The moment lingered between them, the stillness filled not with awkwardness but with a quiet connection. A long pause followed. Then, in a softer tone, Astrix said, Eli. The use of his first name caught him off guard. She had always addressed him formally, keeping a careful distance. But here now she seemed to set aside the mantle of queen, if only for a moment. Yes, he said, his voice equally soft. She hesitated, her eyes shifting back to the city lights below. Have you ever faced a moment where you knew that the decision you made would change everything? Eli considered her question, then nodded. Plenty of times. As a captain, every mission, every call I make can change lives. It's never easy. But when I focus on what's right, what will make things better for the people who rely on me, it helps. Astrix tilted her head slightly. And you're never afraid of making the wrong choice? Always, Eli admitted. But fear doesn't mean I stop. It just means I think carefully before I act. A small smile returned to her lips. You remind me why I began this journey. You've shown me that what's out there isn't just danger. It's opportunity. It's understanding. And you've shown me that opening up isn't a sign of weakness, Eli replied. It's a strength. You've taught me as much as I've taught you. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the air between them shifting. Slowly, almost instinctively, Astrix reached out, her hand brushing against his. It was a light touch, tentative and uncertain, yet it carried a weight that neither of them could ignore. Eli didn't pull away. Instead, he turned his hand, letting their fingers intertwine. The act was subtle but unmistakable. They stood like that, silent and still, until Astrix finally met his gaze again. Eli, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. He knew what she was going to say, but instead of responding with words, he leaned in slightly, testing the boundaries that had once felt so rigid. Astrix didn't move away. Her eyes searched his for a long moment before she closed the remaining distance. Their lips met softly, tentatively at first, as though they were exploring something entirely new. It wasn't a kiss born of passion or urgency. It was one of understanding, of mutual respect and shared vulnerability. It spoke of the bridge they were building, not just between their worlds, but between themselves. When they finally parted, Astrix's hand remained in his, her fingers warm against his skin. She exhaled slowly, as if releasing some long-held tension. I don't know what the future holds, Captain, she said, her voice steady despite the quiet emotion behind it. But I know that it is better shared. Eli gave her hand a gentle squeeze. We'll figure it out together. They turned back to the city lights, the silence between them now charged with something new. It wasn't just the promise of an alliance or a partnership. It was the understanding that, in the midst of uncertainty, they had found something unexpected. Chapter 8. A New Dawn. Captain Eli Mercer stood at the bridge of the Odyssey, his fingers brushing over the controls as he completed the pre-flight checks. Around him, the crew moved with purpose, their chatter low and efficient. The Zeltran delegation had boarded earlier that morning, and now the final cargo containers, filled with cultural artifacts, technological blueprints, and a handful of experimental plants, were being secured. Eli's thoughts drifted back to the past few days. Queen Astrix had worked tirelessly alongside her council and the humans to finalize the agreement. Though some of her advisors still harbored doubts, enough progress had been made to allow this first exchange to happen. Lieutenant Kara Thorne approached from his left, a datapad in hand. Final manifests locked in. Delegations settled in their quarters. I'd say we're ready to depart. Eli nodded. Good. What's the mood in their group? Mixed, Kara said honestly. Some of them are nervous, some curious. One of them, Ryzik, seems excited. He's been chatting with the science team about potential collaborations. Ryzik's got the right idea, Eli said, leaning against the console. This mission isn't just about the technology or the trade deals. It's about showing them what's possible when we work together. Kara smirked. You're starting to sound like one of those idealistic diplomats. Idealism's not always a bad thing, Eli replied with a faint smile. Besides, someone's got to keep reminding us why we're doing this. Their exchange was interrupted by a soft chime. Eli looked up to see Queen Astrix entering the bridge. Her presence drew a brief pause in activity, the crew offering respectful nods before resuming their tasks. Your Majesty, Eli said, straightening. To what do we owe the pleasure? I wanted to see your vessel one last time before we embark, Astrix said, her voice calm but carrying a trace of emotion. This is a significant moment for my people. For me. Eli motioned to one of the observation windows. Then you've come at the perfect time. We're about to break orbit. Astrix stepped closer to the window, her gaze fixed on the planet below. Zeltran's surface, with its intricate cities and vast natural preserves, shimmered under the planet's twin moons. Eli stood a step behind her, giving her a moment to take it all in. "I never thought I would see this day," Astrix said quietly. "For so long we remained bound to our traditions. I believed I was protecting my people by keeping the galaxy at a distance. But now, I see that growth comes not from isolation, but from connection." Eli leaned against the nearby console. "Change doesn't come easy, but you made the choice to try. That's more than most leaders would do." Astrix turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. "And you, Captain Mercer, you've shown us a different path. I wonder if we would have taken this step without your presence." Eli shrugged slightly. "You're the one who had the courage to take the leap. I just happened to be there when you made it." A hint of a smile touched her lips. "Modesty doesn't suit you. Comes with the uniform," he replied, his grin faint but warm. A small vibration ran through the floor as the Odyssey's engines came to life. Astrix's attention shifted back to the planet below. "It feels like a goodbye." Eli stood beside her. "It's not a goodbye. It's a beginning. When you come back, it'll be with new knowledge, new connections. And Zeltron will be better for it." She considered his words, then nodded. "You have a way of putting things in perspective." "I try," he said, his voice light but sincere. Kara's voice cut through the moment. "Captain, we're ready to depart." Eli nodded to Kara, then looked at Astrix. "Care to stay and watch the launch?" Astrix hesitated for a brief moment, then stepped back from the window. "Yes, I'd like that." Eli took his place in the captain's chair. Kara moved to the tactical station, her hands gliding over the controls. The engines roared softly as the ship rose higher into the atmosphere. The view of Zeltron grew smaller, the cities and landscapes merging into a patchwork of color. The ship cleared the planet's gravity well, and the blackness of space opened up before them. Eli glanced at Astrix, who stood just off to his side. Her expression was a mixture of wonder and determination. "It's beautiful," she said. "It is," Eli agreed. A crew member called out from the comm station. "Course plotted, Captain. Ready to engage the drive." Eli took a moment, letting the gravity of the moment settle over him. This was the start of something new, not just for Astrix and her people but for humanity as well. He turned his attention to the controls and gave the order. "Engage." The Odyssey surged forward, stars streaking by as the ship entered hyperspace. For the first time in generations, Zeltron had left its isolation behind. And for the first time, Eli and Astrix found themselves on a shared journey. The future opened before them.